By now, the dude had totally lost it. His jaw nearly hit the floor and he just couldn't believe anyone could survive in that kind of heat. For a second, he even loosened his grip on Trinus. Seeing his reaction, the rest of his crew rushed over asking what was wrong. Leo wasn't exactly new to crazy stuff. He'd seen a fair share of wild things, but this was something else. Still, after freezing for a moment, he snapped out of it and barked out an order to his men to shoot up that star. Ships quickly turned their cannons toward the star ahead, and immediately, several powerful laser beams shot out. But just as the beams closed in, a pair of eyes opened. In just a fraction of a second, every attack was scattered like dust in the wind. Then came the real nightmare. The ships exploded one after another, lighting up in space like fireworks. Most of the crew didn't even get the chance to scream. Leo, now sweating bullets, grabbed the comm and shouted for everyone to scatter, but all he got back were cries of pain, and then silence. Shaking, he stared at the chaos. His legs gave out and he dropped to his knees. Despair crept in, and he says this couldn't be real. By now, he knew he wasn't hallucinating, and there was actually someone inside, but he noticed the guy was butt naked, walking out of a star like it was nothing. Fire danced around him, wrapping his body so Daddy YouTube doesn't take this video down. We then zoom in, and suddenly, the flames faded. Clothes appeared out of nowhere, fitting snug over our boy's sculpture-perfect physique. He stood there, calm as ever, scanning the wreckage with a look colder than space itself. But in the next second, he was already inside their ship. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Though only Leo dared to mutter a few words, he wanted to know who this guy was. But then he noticed the aura coming off him was terrifying, yet he seemed to be just 10th level. Still, it felt like being crushed under a mountain. Leo didn't buy it, saying maybe it was a trick. He suddenly lunged, gathering all his energy into one punch, throwing everything he had. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng didn't even flinch. He just snapped his fingers. In a flash, a tiny golden crow appeared midair. Meanwhile, Leo barely caught the words, "perfect martial path," golden crow. Then the two forces collided, and the next thing Leo knew, flames began wrapping around him. The pain was indescribable. His body started fading, bit by bit, as he kept muttering, "No way!" This couldn't be just 10th level power. But whether he believed or not, it didn't matter because he was already gone. The rest of the crew just stood there in confusion. One of them called out to their boss, but another just whispered, saying he's gone. It's hard for them to accept the fact that their powerful peak 11th level boss was killed so easily. A chill ran down their spines, freezing them in place. Then came another snap of the fingers, and all of them were cut to pieces. Trinus stood frozen among the bodies, a bit lost in the mess. Then she looked up and saw Lu Sheng, casually asking if she was okay, and telling her to contact authorities since everything here was handled. Even though she already had a strong guess, she still asked if he was the Immortal. Her knees dropped before she even realized it. Maybe it was the lingering pressure in the air, or maybe just instinct. But for our boy, this encounter was just a tiny blip. He helped her up and returned to his own ship. However, he had bigger questions now, like how strong he'd actually become. Sadly, it seemed like he wouldn't find that out anytime soon. Back on his ship, he let out a quiet sigh. Every time he triggered the stellar immortal body, his clothes got obliterated. Good thing he could just create a new one using psychic energy. Otherwise, he certainly doesn't want to be dangling his little Lu Sheng in front of a bunch of strangers. Either way, first things first. He called family to check on them, also telling them he had finished his training. Actually, Lu Sheng had already made plans behind the scenes. He invited his family to the tournament. This was his first step of relocating them. Other than his family members, he also invited some martial saints over too. That way, they'd get familiar with life here ahead of time, and convincing them to leave Earth down the line would be way easier. After wrapping up the call, Lu Sheng set course for Yamu again, because he knows there's a grand event waiting for him. At the same time, another ship touched down on Yamu. It was our boy's family. By now, even his parents had reached 6th level, which obviously made them slightly younger as well. They were full of curiosity, wide-eyed at everything around them. Everyone had changed into special attire for the visit, and Mom even commented on how soft and comfy the fabric felt. His sister, of course, was bouncing around like a live wire. She didn't waste a second before starting a live stream. How did it connect all the way back to Earth? Well, aliens probably had 500G Wi-Fi by now or something. Snowy wandered around too, eager to see what kind of place her hubby had landed in. Elsewhere, Harold was getting all sentimental. saying he would never have imagined being here without Lord Lu Sheng. Meanwhile, Lin Zhengyue was equally stunned. Soon, someone came to greet them. The man didn't seem to know exactly who they were, just that he'd been told to welcome some very important guests. With a polite bow, he welcomed them on behalf of the Yamu Federation. The group was clearly flattered. Lu Sheng's parents were quietly bursting with pride, while his sister noticed somehow she could understand what the guy was saying. Must have been the outfit's translation technology. Obviously, she dragged the guy into a selfie right away, which he didn't mind at all. However, not far away, a massive ship slowly descended nearby, way bigger than the one they came in. Lu Qing's eyes lit up. She couldn't wait to film more, already narrating for her stream. But the diplomat guy noticed something else. As soon as he spotted the insignia on that giant ship, he got a little anxious. He recognized the insignia belonged to the Adalite blood-striped wolf family from the Silverstone sector. But hold on. According to the schedule, they weren't supposed to arrive until the afternoon. Why were they showing up this early? Meanwhile, Lu Qing had no clue what was going on. She was just admiring the massive ship as if it were a shiny new toy. In her eyes, it looked big enough to fit several sports stadiums, saying it's honestly super cool. The hatch slowly opened, steam hissing out. A group of armed wolf-like beings marched out in formation, all the while looking stiff and dead serious. Lu Qing, still holding up her phone, let out a small cheer, saying these were actual furries, and they looked awesome. But the moment the leader stepped forward, his eyes locked onto her while noticing the phone, and he wasn't amused. With a sharp growl, he questioned what she was doing. The diplomat suddenly snapped out of his daze. He realized what was happening and started panicking. But it was already too late. Lu Qing had been surrounded. He immediately sent his staff rushing in, afraid the misunderstanding could be on the verge of becoming a full-blown diplomatic disaster. The wolves towered over Lu Qing, clearly not happy. She blinked in confusion, not sure why they became so hostile all of a sudden, but before she could say anything, they all let out a synchronized, bone-rattling howl. Even she could tell something was definitely wrong now. More and more of them started closing in. Even she herself now has a gut feeling that she'd messed up again. The leader stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp. He declared that she would pay for what she'd just done, adding that she needed to be punished. Just as his claws were coming down, the diplomat shouted out, stopping him mid-move. He jumped in front of Lu Qing, protecting her. He tried to explain, saying she had no idea about their customs and didn't mean to disrespect them. He pleaded for forgiveness, hoping they'd let this slide. By now, Mom and Dad had noticed the commotion too. Alarmed, they rushed over. The leader pointed at himself proudly and spoke with pride that the noble blood-striped wolf of Adalite never allowed anyone to record them. Apparently, they see it as a grave insult, a violation, and a form of blasphemy. His tone got colder by the second. Mom and Dad rushed over and shielded their daughter, trying to stay calm, but they were just as caught off guard as everyone else. One of the officers whispered that, apparently, their clan had always been like this, obsessively sensitive about being filmed. They'd clashed with various groups over it, even started actual fights, and some even ended in bloodshed. Lu Qing finally realized she'd seriously stepped on a cultural landmine. Her mom held her hand and whispered not to be afraid. The argument escalated. The tension was thick in the air. The diplomat knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let anything happen to this family. Not on his watch. But things weren't going well, and everyone was on edge. Snowy nervously asked if there was any way out of this. Someone replied that the bloodstripe wolves were extremely stubborn. In this situation, the only person who might make them back off was the senator himself. As if on cue, space suddenly split open. Literally. From inside, the senator walked out already briefed and fully aware of what had happened. He quickly stepped in, telling everyone to leave it to him now. He walked straight up to the leader and quietly said something in his ear. The leader didn't budge until he heard one word. Immortal. His entire expression changed in an instant. Then, without warning, he threw his head back and let out another long howl. This time, no one understood what it meant, until the whole pack dropped to one knee. They apologized, deeply and respectfully. They called the group honored friends and hoped for forgiveness for their ignorance and rudeness, causing the family to be confused. Snowy, though, had a good idea what was going on. She figured this had everything to do with her hubby. Lu Qing realized her mistake too, and she didn't mean to offend them. But just as she braced for more awkwardness, the mood did a total 180. The wolves actually insisted she keep filming. In fact, To really show their sincerity, they got all their warriors involved. Everyone struck poses, doing everything to make up for Lu Qing. Even the diplomat was stunned. The most camera-averse family in the galaxy was now posing like models. It felt surreal. Honestly, he wouldn't be surprised if this made tomorrow's headlines. But what confused him more was, who exactly was this family? Why hadn't the senator told him anything? Not long after, Lu Sheng returned to Yamu. He scrolled through his phone and saw the group photos and smiled, noting how she's adapted fast, maybe even made some new friends already. Besides their martial strength, with Yamu's level of technology, helping his family live past 1,000 years was totally possible. And with time, he could personally guide them in martial arts too, extend their lives even further. To Lu Sheng, there was nothing worse than regret, wanting to care for your family when it's already too late. He wasn't about to let that happen. The scene then shifts to a group of people welcoming him back. Judging from the look on his face, the senator could tell Lu Sheng had gained a lot. The tournament was only a few days away, and since Lu Sheng was the star of the event, there were still a few things they needed to go over. But first, he introduced Olu, the supreme commander of the outer space battlefield. The chief executor spoke up too, saying that it was thanks to Lu Sheng that Star Vulture Leo, the triple S-level fugitive wanted by 8 star sectors alongside his crew, was taken down. She added that she'd received hundreds of thank you letters from across the stars in the last few days. Far was, without a doubt, the most shocked. After all, Leo was a peak 11th level and had been to the outer space battlefield. Even though he was a deserter, his strength was still nothing to laugh at. The chief executor admitted that even leading a full squad, she might not have been able to take him down. But Lu Sheng did. She explained that Black Butterfly Sector had once sent 3 11th level after him, and still failed. But Lu Sheng wiped them all out like it was nothing. The Supreme Commander gave a thumbs up, praising him with a grin. Truly, a young hero. Lu Sheng nodded humbly, but he wanted to know more about the so-called outer space battlefield.